As you can see, we're already disassembling the right leg and right ankle and foot and battery box. So as you can see, I have a compartment that will hold my batteries, and I've got some relays and power junctions, a fuse, as well as a cell logger that can control the manage between the two LiPo batteries that will go in there. Here you can see my Anderson power pole connectors. Kevin Holme on his system has 4, so he runs 24 volts and 12 volts and ground and a control wire. I wanted to have common 24 volts throughout my Droid and then do step downs from that once I got it into the body. It means lower amperage running throughout up to the legs. So I've got common, control, and 24 volts. Now, as you can see, here's my power wires, my 24 volts and common. Here's my Q85 wires, and here's my control wire. Now, what I'm doing, as you can see, I've got an extended socket set on here. I'm using the new ankle locks, the ankle bolts provided by Doug. So it just has a cotter pin on this side, and that's literally it. And then I should be able to just knock this out. If I can get my wires out of the way. And literally, there we are. So Doug's system is fantastic. I don't know if I will be able to continue to use it with Kevin's system. Actually, I should be able to. He has a slightly different bolt setup. It's a little longer. Yeah, his is longer in order to get through the ankle plates. So, slight difference. I definitely do like this larger size. It's a little easier to access. We'll see how Kevin's cotter pins work. Here's realizing you can't see. So there's Doug's setup, and Kevin's is behind it. So you can see Doug has a very large cotter pin, but his bolt is same diameter, it looks like, but about half an inch shorter. Kevin's needs that additional length in order to get through this plate. And it looks like there's no way to leverage Doug's at all for that. So not a huge concern. Like I said, different size in cotter pins. Doug's was really easy to grab and put in and replace. This may be a little harder because it's smaller. Worst case, we just enlarge this hole to accept this cotter pin, and life goes on. We'll know once we get to that step, which is a little ways from now. But anyway, my diagrams. And again, you'll see me use these little jars. So this has the battery box screw cover as well as the two hex screws. There's about ½ inch that I use to mount the battery box to the foot shelf. So I just like to keep all of my components together as I work on them. It makes it so that I don't suddenly go, where the heck did I put it? And then you can never find it, which is always really, really frustrating. Okay, so as you can see, the cables came out real easy. I use this braided steel sheath, one because I think aluminum or steel looks good as opposed to a black cable. Just my personal preference, I thought it looked cool. Plus, this is a friction point as it goes back and forth and as the ankle pivots, and so I really wanted each of these have a protective sheath on it, just the wire braid, to kind of hold them together and keep it nice and tight so they don't expand out on me, and then this steel braided sheath affords a lot more protection against any of the pinching or maneuver through here. So you can see I have a War Parts ankle lock, which went with these threaded rods, which would go all the way up, and it connected into a piece that was up there. For reference, there's the ankle lock piece that went up in the shoulder for the COM-8 frame. Those will all be going up on the junkyard, since I will no longer have a requirement for them. So we're literally just gonna remove this. That's loose and free floating in there. So there we go. All right, and now we have to get the 2 bolts here, or excuse me, 2 screws that hold the foot shell in place. There's 1 for our wires. There's 2. Now, these will get reused again. Those 4 screws will get attached to the ankle lock mechanism, and that will go on the junkyard. Okay, so there is our hole that the ankle lock went through and then met with the threaded rod out this way. And then here's how Kevin and I do the cable management. Instead of having another hole that goes up through, many of you have holes that you just run your wiring through. Totally fine. I like having less exposed here, so I'm really happy to be reducing it down to just that steel plate that will go through. It'll be much less noticeable. I like hiding the wires. Now, I'm most likely going to have to expand this a little bit more. Kevin has all of his, I think he said he has a 1/2-inch hole. To be honest, I'm not sure what size hole I have on either side. I just always kind of make it large enough to go what I need to do. So I've got a 3/4 on one side and a 0.6 on the other side, and they are about 1/2 inch wide. So really the big thing when you're working with this, you're not really worried about the rigidity in this, especially since we're going to be taking all the pivot mechanism away, and we're not relying on that anymore, and it's all going to be up here in the ankle itself with Kevin's system. So really not a huge concern. So I may open this up, I may enlarge it, but to both side walls, just to give myself that much more space. And here's why. Okay, so we previously looked at Kevin's COM-8, or Kevin's Q85, not COM-8, Q85 cable, And remember, he goes ahead and he pre-attaches this adapter on there. And so we need to make sure that the hole is large enough that we can get this, we can push this through. So if I open it to both side walls, that should be enough. I should be able to thread it down in there without having to take the connector off at all. That is one of the important steps. So we'll set this aside. I think the other thing we're going to do is we're going to enlarge the hole right here in the bottom of our foot shell. Again, I would like to get it large enough that it can receive the connector. And I'm curious, just having a thought that I wonder, so that needs to be, how big? That needs to be a 3/4 inch bit. There is enough room on the inside of this that if we were to get a drill bit and enlarge it to 3/4 inch, that connector would be no problem. We would never have to turn it sideways, and that would just go straight through and straight back. That may be worth doing. So that's good to know. We may be making a trip to Lowe's tonight. To me, that would be really, really valuable. You know, that's 6 inches, so my stepper bit's not going to work on that. Stepper bit will open this just fine, perfectly. Again, we will, so let's move all this out of the way. All right, so here is our Q85 bracket, our Q85 motor, our Omni wheels. Here is the receiving end to the foot shell, to the battery box. As you can see, I will need to reattach my epoxy. That looks like that is broken free. In fact, we're going to mark the locations for that right now, so that for some reason, if it decides to leave on us, we are these things are a pain in the butt to get recentered, reset up. I may even look at putting some screws through just so I can thread it into the foot shell. That actually, thinking about it right now, sounds like a fantastic idea. I may have some long screws that I can do that with, and I will just tap some holes into here real quick, and I will just make sure it's just enough to seat it in, and then this will not ever happen again. Love it when ideas come to you while you're working. So again, trying to get this to where you can see. I'll adjust the camera just a little bit. There we go. Alright, this hole needs to be large enough. So again, we'll do a stepper on this hole, make it the larger size in order to accept these wires even easier. So no real concern. So when you get down on the inside of my compartment, or my bracket, you get some point with. So you can see here is the Q85 cable, and that is where it connects in. So that's a short junction down. It comes in, breaks out of the signal pair, and the Q85 cables connects in right there. I then snake it. Does about a 3-inch snake, and then comes out this hole. Kevin has mentioned just feed it all the way up the leg into the ankle and do the connector in there, which would give me 3-4 more inches. I actually kind of like that idea, so that's probably going to be in the plans. Is I will get that whole connector, remove the bracket, and feed it up inside. Easy peasy. The other thing is the long power wire routes down and in. So this set of cables and this cable all route down through the hall, button hook, and then come back up through here and then connect here. It's all one solid piece of wire. We are going to have to take this off, break the connections here in the back to get the pins out, take the wire out, and we're going to have to redo this whole wiring set because it is not long enough based on Kevin's new hubs and the way I'd originally designed it. So not a problem, but that's what we're kind of at. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this, and I'm going to get some of the things together in order to put this together, and I'll see you in a few minutes. Alright, stick around. Hey, and welcome back to This Old Empire. Where we left off, we were disassembling our right foot? Yes, right foot. And ankle, and we were getting it down to the foot shell. We took that off. As you can see, I went ahead and took off the 2 hose clamps that I had on so I could get rid of the foot shell, foot hoses, because obviously I would not be able to maneuver and do this sort of stuff without having those gone. So that will be a challenge later on to get those back in. The Q85 foot bracket, I've removed all the wiring except for the Q85 single wire. I've also removed the 4-wheel drive spacing tensor that I have because I am running the 4-wheel drive setup, 4-wheel drive wheel, and I have the 4-wheel drive drive system. So, a couple things. So I spent a little time talking with Kevin via text message. So the hall sensor wire connector, this guy right here, this little black connector, is about 3/4 of an inch, right about there. So you run into the challenge of you have to be able to get it through your foot bracket. You have to get it through, well, so you have to get through your Q85 bracket. You gotta get through the foot plate that Kevin provides, which changes the pivot mechanism. You then have to get it through your foot shell, and then you gotta get it through these holes. Coincidentally, it doesn't fit that wide. And your ankle. It does not fit through any of those holes as currently designed. That's okay. Kevin and I had a long conversation about the sizing on these. You know, I just said, hey, what if I ran a 13/16 bit and widened it just a little bit, just enough that I could get the head through. Or what if I took it to actually, 7/8 or, whatever. 13/16 it fits fine. So this has been widened to 7/8, and this hole has been widened to 13/16. And it's not as free moving, but if you're only running it through carefully, not a problem. Again, it drops right through there. So when I do my other Q85 bracket, I will do it at 13/16, not 7/8, but that's just reason why. Okay, we are not going to enlarge this hole on the hub shoulders. Kevin showed me a couple videos that he had of some of his pilot testing, and we want as much thickness on these hub shafts as possible in order to endure the stress of, you can remember, all of the body's stress is going to be directed up through those 2 points, and those are going to be the pivot mechanism. So there's going to be a lot of energy going into those, and the more we take away from the thickness of those tubes, which Kevin is manufacturing himself out of solid aluminum bar, that's problematic. So not wanting to have a crash, we'll cross this bridge when we get there. We'll figure out exactly how we're going to go with these. But in the meantime, these are easy fixes. So I went ahead and have already done those. So as you can see, this is all the way through. Again, I used my 7/8 stepper bit, which is originally what we started on, what part was it? The hub linkage on the shoulders, but obviously we went to a 1 1/8 full-size stepper bit is how we got the full-size hole. But this is kind of my go-to 7/8, is really has most of the sizes that I need. So that one was all the way through 7/8, and then this one was just to 13/16 in what it went through. All right, so not any real concern. And then on this on the actual bracket, again, 13/16 is what it goes to. Okay, so with that being said, there are a left and a right to these leg foot brackets that Kevin created. So let me move this back just a little more so you can see it. All right, so let's get a good look at this. So you have your main pivot shaft. This is actually where your pivot mechanism is going to occur, right here. So you're going to have this beveled edge, or this notched edge, goes towards the front. All right, so that's towards your front linkage. And then you have your pivot mechanism, and then down here is where the cotter pin and bolt will go through. Cotter pin will be on this side, and it'll go through, and then this is what will actually connect to your ankle on the outside of the foot shell. Now, that being said, if you look at it, Kevin has provided 4 holes. One of the comments that I had to him was, in future versions, I probably recommend not having those holes, just because everyone's foot shell and foot, where they have their screw holes is different, and it can change. And it just probably the benefit. It's easier as a builder to just go ahead and place the holes and then having to adjust. But again, it's not really that big of a deal. All right, so this wide portion is going to go to the wide portion of your channel, and this narrow small piece is going to go on the small piece of your, so it's going to orient as such. Alright. Now, since we already did the hole widening, the other thing that I did is I did a quick test fit. And it's always good to do test fits. So I lined up, see if I can get it. So you can see that I lined up the center hole, which is going to go through the ankles, and all the wires can go through, is perfectly lined up. I've just got this flipped upside down. This allowed me then to put a marker on the bottom of my ankle channel, at the top and the bottom. And now I apologize, the plate is shifting because I'm just holding it with my thumb. So I did one here and here. I just marked it, and then I had it clamped in place so that when I flipped it over to this side channel, I could then mark the top, well, I guess it's technically the bottom of the foot plate. I could mark it here and here, which corresponds to a marker hole there and on that one. And so this is not threaded, so there is not really a concern that the screw has to be perfectly aligned. So in this instance, on this one, it's going to become more of an oval shape because I'm going to drill through right where that's at. This one will be its own unique hole. Again, so I talked to Kevin and I was like, hey, I've only been running this with two screws, what are they, inch-long screws that have been connecting to the foot shell to the Q85 bracket. Kevin has not tested running only 2. He says theoretically it should be okay. However, theoretically, and after seeing the traumatic crash of his droid, when the different hubs that he was using with a smaller dimension, when it actually split open like a tin can, and literally watched the leg buckle and his droid fell over, and I nearly dropped my phone as I'm trying to dive through my phone to go grab his droid. It was an instinctive reaction, so I am probably going to put, fairly certain that I'm going to put these 2 additional holes just to give good linkage and connection there. Alright, so that will be the next thing we're going to do, is we're going to drill those 2 holes. First we'll get it mounted to this to make sure we have all alignment. Alright, so that I have a couple of challenges that we have to do. Let me turn down the music just a little bit. You gotta rock out when you're in the Empire and you're doing some engineering. Alright. So that will get this lined up. We will then have to make sure that our holes match up on the Q85 bracket because the screw's going to have to go all the way through that. We want to make sure, I will probably thread these ones. I actually have lock nuts under these two holes to actually secure it in place, but I will probably just thread and not be as concerned with the other two. It'll just be more of a stability piece. But I do need to drill this hole through, so we'll have to pull out the Q85, we'll have to pull out the Vex, so we can get this, once we have this attached with the first two holes, which is why we're going to drill these first. Once I have it attached, then I can remove the brackets and I can mark the bottom side where this hole is at and then where these two screw holes are at, because that is what holds my Anderson power pole connector, which goes to the foot shelf. So it should sit approximately back here. And I originally was thinking that I was going to have to count for the thickness of it, but I don't think so, because it's actually pushing the foot shell down, not the Anderson power pole. So there may be no adjustment on this, which would be fantastic. I really did not want to have to take away the acrylic. Alright, so I think I've covered everything that I've done up to this point and that we're going to do. So yeah, let's get started. Alright, so I went and got the screw box for these lovely screws that I use through the foot shells. They are a 1/4 inch by 20 by 7/8. So 1/4 by 20 by 7/8. Alright, so checking our handy dandy tap chart, a 1/4 inch by 20 needs a number 4 drill bit. Alright, so there we go. So you can see it's mounted on there, nearly flush with that top portion. It pulls up a little bit, so I'll have to, oh, I know why. I have a screw hole in there for a bracket, so we'll have to punch that hole through too. So, good, okay. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and pause for a minute. I'm going to go ahead and get the Q85 out and the Vex wheel and the 4-wheel drive belt. There's no reason for you to sit and watch all that, and I will go ahead and mark all of my holes in here and punch it through the plate. So when we come back, we'll see that and we'll start reassembling everything. Alright, stick around. Alright, so I figured this was actually maybe worthwhile seeing. So before we can drill these holes and I can do all the rest of these, I really need to make sure that this bracket is mounted properly. And so that means we gotta cut the holes in this portion of the foot shelf. I know most people's thoughts is, you know, oh, what about this, you know, ugliness? I'm gonna go pick up probably some galvanized steel sheeting, probably small sizes, fold it in half, and then just put it in here, and I'll put some JB Weld in there, level it smooth, and then I'll repaint it, reprime it, repaint that section just right here. And I'll mask everything so I only get the portions that I need. That will make it look relatively transparent, or not noticeable. So what I've been doing while off camera is I used my calipers and did measurements from the inside of this. The foot shelf thickness is 0.1, so then figured out how far back from this edge that 0.1 would be, and then from this edge 0.1 would be, and then measured from this interior edge to this interior edge, and then that gave me where it matched up to the 0.1, so that means this is literally just wide enough for the foot channel. And then I got the thickness of this plate and marked it there. So what we're going to do is I have a small, what size is this? Number 29 bit is obviously thinner than the overall dimensions of the plate. But what I really want to do, so I'm centering over the top of the pivot hole. Alright, so here's my center hole, and my ankle, the existing ankle pivot holes are right here. So I'm centered over the top of that within my wall boundary. What I'm really looking for is I want to find the inner portion of this wall of the steel foot shelf. So once we get that, then we can enlarge the channel. So we are real close to that wall, which is where we want to be. So we're going to go to larger bit. Alright, so we're going to go with the number 3. That should give us absolutely what we need. So now we're going to enlarge this hole. Okay, and you can see right there that we're right up against the sidewall. So, just a little bit more so you can see. But that's looking good. So that gives us the path, the pilot hole for where we want to come through. And now we need to make this the width of this. That is 1 full inch. We're just going to ballpark it right around this, like such. Use our straight edge. Now we may have to go a little bit left or right once we actually get this set up. Feeling pretty good though. I'm erasing my mind's playing with the paint. So now what we're going to do is we're just kind of go drill along, drill each one of these holes, and we'll just kind of, then we'll interconnect them. Okay, so you can see that we used 3 different files, worked our way up, and this now fits nicely inside the hole. Alright, welcome back. As you can see, we went ahead and got this through our slit. It's a nice tight fit, just like a millimeter on either side, so it's nice and clean. And then we've got our hole lined up in the center. Our foot shell is nice and flush against the foot plate, and then our Q85 frame is, our Q85 shell is nice and tight, secured in there. We've got our lock nuts. So we're just gonna go ahead and do the markings on the inside and identify all of our spots. Alright, so welcome back. Alright, so next step that we have to do is we marked the inside hole of the ankle pivot point on both sides. You might be able to see it in there. What we've done is we've gone ahead and marked. So the uniqueness of Kevin's system is this raises the pivot point. So what's normally with the ankle pivot point now slides up about 1/4 of an inch from the looks of it. So that's important, so we have to get that adjusted up. Now there's no easy way to do that. Kevin recommends, you mark it and then you pull the bracket out. So I'm going to reiterate that it's in his instructions a couple times. If you leave this bracket inside the foot shell and try to drill through it, you're going to tear this apart. This bracket's going to fail, the welds are going to fail, and you're just going to destroy it. It's no longer going to be useful for you. You're going to need a new one from Kevin. So please heed his warnings. Don't do this. Kevin recommends either sticking a piece of wood inside the ankle channel, which you can then use a circular saw or a hole saw and go through and expand it out. And that gives the wood, will act as a pilot, since bits really don't like coming down, trying to drill into a hole and then drop it, Bits don't like drilling into a partial hole. They want to be able to expand into, solid material. So what I'm going to try to do is I put a larger grinding bit or a cutting bit on here, and so I'm just going to try working, see if I can get through this steel with this. If I can get close enough to it, it may be all that we need to do. The real test will be, can I get this cotter pin to slide up into that channel with ease? If the answer is yes, then we're good. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get our safety gear on. I know this is going to be loud because it's steel. Steel's always loud when you grind it, so we're going to put our hearing protection on, and we'll talk to you in a little bit. Hey, welcome back. Alright, so we've pretty much got the foot shell just about done. So as you can see, we were able to get it through. We got our pin through, cotter pins in right there, the ankle pins through. Now, we had a little bit of finagling that I had to do. So this is the new bolt. So there's now 4 bolts that come through. So this one and this one, I actually tapped them into the Vex and Q85 bracket, as well as through the ankle plate, as well as through the foot shell. So there's no bolt because all 3 of those pieces of metal have been threaded exactly to that thread size. However, when I started building these 3 or 4 years ago, whatever it was, I made these holes larger than the actual bolt. That was by accident. I was following the size hole that was in the foot shell, and I didn't think it through, and so I had to put nylon lock nuts. Now, that black stuff that you see around that is JB Weld. Alright, so here's one of those nylon lock nuts, and you can see that giant mass of JB Weld around it. Now what happened was, this snapped off fairly early during this process while we were working on this tonight, and I need to reattach it. So I've roughed up this portion. I've also roughed up this, so I will, before the next episode, this will be reattached back in its position. The nylon lock nut will be affixed with JB Weld steel, JB Weld. That should hold it in place. Just a quick couple more items. This button screw and this button screw are both what I used for cable management with these cable brackets and washers. So I just have those affixed in there just because then we can at least see where they go. I know they go all the way through into the steel plate. So all of that works. I also have the 2 screw holes already drilled to hold our Anderson power poles connection right here. Yeah, so really all that we need to do is fix that nylon lock nut, and then I am going to, I think I mentioned before, I'm going to put a piece of steel galvanized, cut it. That'll be probably 2 layers thick, maybe 1. I'll stick it into the underside, and then I will push JB Weld steel through here, let it level out, and that should give us really good bond, and then this will be able to be smooth and sanded, and we can do all the things and make this look pretty. Is there anything else that we forgot? No, not really. So all we really, like I said, we have to do is then we'll cut new approximately 4-foot wires to go through, connect to these. We'll put some pins on, we'll solder them, and after we crimp them, just to make sure we got good solid connections, we'll run them in here, and life will be golden, and we will have power and connectivity. All right. So I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Remember to check us out and like us, subscribe, and if you want to see more of this old empire, leave us some comments in the notes. Thanks. Bye.